Welcome back to Seamstress Without a Cause, to the fourth part of my making a Tudor costume video vlog series. Now most of the dress is done. It is time to work on the placket, which is a piece of interfacing serged to the velvet, cut in the shape of the front with a couple extra inches on the sides for overlap, and then stitched down to a piece of heavy cotton canvas. And here, as you can tell, I am just folding the edges under, mitering the corners so I get a nice crisp point, and then all that will be hand stitched down, being careful not to stitch through the outer layer of the fabric. And after finishing this process, the lining was stitched on by folding under the edges and simply slip stitching it in place, again careful not to go through the outer layer of fabric. Here I am marking out the placement for the centerpiece, which I got from trulyhats.com in the Montana blue and tanzanite color, and I'm just marking out the placement of where that will be, and then I will hand sew that on through its many openings, going through all layers of the placket. I am doing French seams for all these skirt layers, which means I am sewing it first together, wrong side to wrong side, so the seam is on the outside, and then flipping it and stitching it down, encasing the raw edge so it is on the inside, leaving a nice finished edge both ways. And to accomplish this, first I serged the layers together, and then flipped them, and then stitched them so the right sides were together on my sewing machine. I like to use a walking or even feet foot like the one I'm using here whenever I'm working with stretches or velvets. I pleated the skirts with one large box pleat in the back, and then knife pleats facing towards the center back all the way around the sides, up to just a few inches from the front opening of the skirt. I then hand basted the pleats in place before running it through my sewing machine so they would stay in place more securely. I also bound the top edge of the skirt with matching dark blue bias tape so there would be no raw edge to have any little crumbs of velvet come off when it is worn. So this is machine sewn on, and then it's turned over and hand stitched to the inside of the skirt. To attach the skirt to the bodice, I used heavy upholstery or button warp weight thread and hand whip stitched it to the bodice using tight stitches and reinforcing wherever it felt necessary, so there will be no gaps and no chance of it just ripping off when the gown is worn. The process for leveling the hem on the gown was the same as on the kirtle, but this time I took some white waxy chalk and rubbed it where the pins were so I would have the marks right where I need them to be when it came time to cut it. Now that the overgown is finished, it's time to move on to the sleeves, which I largely followed the actual pattern instructions for. So there's 2 pieces stitched together, and then they are bound with hand-cut bias self fabric that matches the lining, which will then be flipped over and hand stitched to the inside lining. Careful not to let any of that blue show through on the gray. These facings for the slashes are sewn on, and then they will be pulled through the cut pieces on the undersleeve and then have their raw edges tucked under and hand stitched down to the lining, so everything will be neat from the outside and it won't fray. To decorate the slashes, I am sewing on these glass dark blue pearl beads from JoAnn's to the top and bottom point of each slash. Just hand stitching it on, nothing special. I just think it makes it look a little more finished and more extravagant to have some trim. Instead of sewing ties to the sleeves, I opted instead to add eyelet holes, which will then be laced to the sleeves of the overgown, which I have added a pair of slim ties to that will thread through these holes instead of two sets of ties tying to each other. For the white inner sleeve, I decided to embroider the cuff using this replica of some embroidery seen on a portrait of Catherine Parr, which I got from Art Embroidery Designs on Etsy. And I just embroidered this on my Brother embroidery machine, as you can see here. And again, I sewed the side seams of these inner sleeve pieces with French seams, so there are no raw edges. I folded the excess from below the embroidered section under and stitched it right along the top of the embroidery so it would hide the backing of the embroidery, and then I folded the raw edge of that down to make a casing so I can thread a drawstring through, leaving a small gap right by the seam. I then inserted that into the oversleeves, pinned it in place, and then just added some strategic stitches to keep it from slipping out. Now pretty much the gown is done after adding some jewels that are also from Truly hats to the oversleeve. And next we will visit the making of the Tudor French hood and some accessories. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.